Hi everyone, my name's Cole. I kind of upset. I have been for a while. Um, I feel kind of uh, hopeless, like I don't have a real outlet to express these concerns I have for the way our government seems to be functioning. Um, I am 21 years old. I am by no means an expert on any of the topics that I'm going to be talking about, but I feel like a weight. Like, if I don't do something, I am complacent in the current state of affairs that I'll be talking about. So, um, I guess we'll start with a fun topic: homelessness, everyone's favorite topic. Essentially, we're in a an era that we are actively allowing our members of our community, our citizens, to be starving and freezing on our Manitoba winters in our streets, right? We have roughly 1,500 homeless people in Winnipeg. You can drive down Main Street and see them, and it's terribly upsetting in a first world country that absolutely has the resources to house and feed these people. And we'll get into that. Absolutely has the resources to house and feed every single one of our homeless citizens. And we're choosing not to. And it's incredibly upsetting. It's abhorrent. It's terrible. So we're at a situation where um, so if you had to guess how much it would cost to house and feed every single homeless person in Winnipeg, all 1,500 of them, uh, we would be giving them directly about $25,000 a year, around that. That should be more than enough to cover rent and food, and be able to support them in their lives and give them some sense of dignity. These are people. You can go out and talk to them. They're not people that you just sort of scarily like walk by and try to imagine that they're not there. They're people that are suffering every day until we do something about it. And we'll get into reasons about possible reasons why homelessness even arose in the first place. But um, if you had to guess how much it would cost to house and feed all of these people, um, you don't have to guess. I'll tell you. It's about 10% of the Winnipeg Police Service budget, and that's not a lot, considering that Winnipeg spends more on our police than I think almost any city in Canada. Uh, it's incredibly bloated, and we keep funneling money into this thing that does nothing for our actual citizens who need help. This dumping money into a police force isn't going to fix homelessness or poverty or the things that actually affect crime rates, the things that everyone is so obsessed about with funding the police. We can't have a conversation about crime rates and like things that the police are supposed to be stopping without talking about the underlying issues that cause them. That the poverty that forces these people into lives where they need to commit crimes. It's it's absurd. The police are a purely reactionary measure. We're not ever going to have a world where we don't call some enforcement unit when there's a bank robbery or whatever. But we can't pretend that these people are fixing homelessness or poverty, the underlying issues that cause people to rob a banks in the first place, right? So 10% is not a lot. 10% is not a lot, considering it will house and feed every single homeless person in Winnipeg. Every single one. And that's incredible. That's like an incredible thing that we can do today. We can house and feed every single homeless person. We just need the maybe public outcry. I don't know why, like, our politicians who are elected officials whose only job, it seems to me, I don't actually know, it seems to me their only job is to take into account the will of the people who elected them and are paying their salaries and put them in a position of power where they can actually make change, right? I don't see why these people who are paid to do this aren't doing the most simple thing. That is, we can just reallocate funds from an incredibly bloated police force to directly stop the suffering of thousands of people. And it's something that we can do very easily. But there's bigger issues that make me even more upset. Like, we can do tests. We can see if this actually works. We can say, does direct transfer of funds or housing and feeding these people actually provide the outcomes that we would hope for, right? So we've done the tests. We've run the experiments. We have in Steinbach, we used a housing first model and provided resources to, I believe, like 27 homeless people. It gave them around $30,000, something like that. And in the first year alone, it was a 200% return on investment, meaning that the government saved twice as much as what they put in to house and feed these people. So they spent probably, I think, like $1 million housing and feeding these people, and they saved $2 million by housing and feeding 27 people. Just with the costs of keeping them in and out of jail cells, the weight on the public healthcare system, the police who kick them around and get out of here, take your tent somewhere else, you know? It's all those costs that they saved by just doing the bare minimum and housing these people. So now it becomes a question of, we have just the fact that people shouldn't be starving and freezing on our streets in a first world country. It's a pretty good one. That's like I think that should be the only argument we need to make. We have the ability to reallocate funds to actually house these people and give them the resources they need. And 3, there's financial incentive. Our government would be saving money if we just provided the resources necessary to house and feed them. And what do I do with this knowledge? Like, what's going on? Like, I don't understand. There's no reason. I've made the argument for every political party. Like, everyone should be on board that this is an initiative that we should take today, right now. There's no reason we shouldn't be housing and feeding our citizens and not forcing them to starve on the streets. It's just a thing that we can do very easily, and there's no reason not to. There's financial incentives. The PCs will be on board. Like, what do I do with this information? And it's even bigger than that. Because in Winnipeg, we have one of the highest Indigenous populations of any city in Canada, I believe. We have about 12% of our citizens are Indigenous, and we can do surveys. We can walk the streets and talk to these homeless people, and we find out that more than 65% of homeless people in Winnipeg are Indigenous. Now, if you tell yourself a story to try to explain why this is that doesn't include the hundreds of years of colonization and stripping these people of their culture and heritage. And those are just the ones that made it out. Like, we're now seeing the thousands of children that were just taken from their homes and killed, murdered. Like, it's if your story that you tell yourself to try to reconcile these things doesn't include some version of the hundreds of years of oppression and colonization that has been thrust upon the indigenous population, that's just our it's our education system at work. We didn't learn this. Like, not a lot of people know this. We just kind of forget about it. We pretend it didn't happen, and it's really our responsibility. It's the bare minimum that we can do to try to make the smallest, most simple thing right in a first world country. In Canada, I don't understand why it hasn't been done so long ago. We're in 2021. Like, I I don't understand. I feel powerless, hopeless. I don't want to be a politician. I'm going to be honest. It looks like a terrible time. Everyone is upset constantly, even if you're trying your best. Government seems like a giant boat that thousands of people have their hands on the wheel, and they're all trying to steer it in one direction, but it's impossible for one person to steer it in any meaningful direction. And I understand the frustration. Like, it seems like a terrible time. But if our elected officials, correct me if I'm wrong, is their only job to understand what the will of the people is that elected them and pay their salaries, it's their only job to actually act out and make a meaningful change when it comes to these things. Like, they're getting paid to do it. So if no one does, fuck it, I'll do it. Like, I have no expertise. I am far out of my realm of knowledge about any of these things. But if no one does anything about this seemingly simple issue, I have no choice. I don't understand what the fuck is going on. If someone could please explain to me what the fuck. That's about all I had to say. Gotta love how we're defunding social services like hydro, education system, healthcare, and you can see it from a mile away. It's just moving towards privatization, where we strip away the ability for these resources to actually function properly, to a point where the private sector needs to step in. And you see, Palliser's done this with hydro. They're now moving forward with privatization of a social service, something that we decided long ago was worth spending public money on to keep the prices low because it benefits everyone. He's now stripped it to a point where it's not functioning, and the private sector needs to step in. This is a classic move. Classic move, man. You've seen it with, like, steel factories in Brazil. There's, like, countless examples. This is the road to privatization. We've done it. You saw it with your own eyes. Manitoba, great job. And it's just, I'm upset that these things are happening, and I feel like I have no power. I can do nothing about it. And it's frustrating. I have no happy note to end on. That's it. Thank you if you listened for, 14 minutes? Jesus. All right.